Hey everyone, my name is Neil Karski and I'm the CEO of Patient Engine, a seven-figure digital marketing, lead conversion, and coaching agency for high-ticket aesthetics providers. And I would like to personally welcome you to the Aesthetics Millionaires Show, where we sit down with industry entrepreneurs to talk about their personal journeys and discuss proven growth strategies. My genuine hope is that through this podcast, we can create more success stories in this industry and help more business owners scale past their competition. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm joined by Mark Koepsell, who's the owner and CEO of Xanadu Med Spa in Colorado. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
You're a busy man. Tell us a little bit more. Let's just dive into it. Tell us a little bit more about what you're working on with. You're in a podcast studio. Most of my virtual guests come in from their house or from their actual center. What are you working on right now? What can we expect here?
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. So just recently we launched our own podcast series. And literally it's just me interviewing the staff. So I've got 23 staff members and really they're the experts in what they do. I run the business. So the podcast is just to help the listener to get a better understanding of medical aesthetics, all the pieces of it. So we dig into, some of our laser treatments or medical weight loss or longevity or whatever the case is. And it just lets us really dig in. So it's kind of fun.
So you're using the podcast as an educational mechanism for content. Is it are you posting it through your Facebook and Instagram? Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it'll be on YouTube, okay, on our YouTube channel. And then we're taking little clips of it and using it for Instagram posts.
I love it.
Yeah. So it creates a lot of great content.
Of course it does. We'll have a lot of great content from this podcast as well, but that's a really good idea. I love that. So you're interviewing your staff, which is amazing. It helps to feature their stories and introduce staff members to the public or reintroduce them to your existing patients and clients. And then you're using it as an educational platform or entertainment. I don't know if you guys are doing any funny stuff.
A little of both.
Okay, great.
Right?
Yeah.
It depends who's being interviewed and how punchy we get.
I know, like The Office.
Yeah, exactly.
The Xanadu Office. That's cool. And then you guys are just repurposing these clips to grow your following, which is great. I'm a paid ads guy, Mark. You know that. I own a med spa as well, and I've used paid ads to open my spa and grow it. And but I think organic content, when done right, is definitely could be a pretty valuable strategy. I just don't think if you don't have good content or you don't have an engaged audience, it's going to be really hard for you to get any results out of it, right? So
true. It's true. Because all the time, we'll have like a static post, right? And I feel like two people like it, usually my staff, and it just doesn't engage the listener or the viewer, right? And so you're exactly correct. It has to be done well. And we're always chasing that. I wouldn't say that we found the secret sauce yet, but we keep trying.
Well, you can educate, you can entertain, or you can coach, I believe, or help are the three things that I've seen as far as like content breakdowns. So yeah, I think you just got to find your niche, right? And you probably just a unique angle in how you present these different interviews. But I'm sure your staff members are having a great time.
No, they're having a good time with it, and they get all nervous, but I think they also feel pretty flattered. It's got some cool factor behind it.
What a great idea! What a great idea, Mark. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I know we dove right into this, but I want to get to know your story a little bit better. How did you get into entrepreneurship? How did you get into aesthetics? Did those happen at the same time? Did they happen at different time? Tell us a little bit more about who Mark is.
Yeah, my background is probably fairly unique in this space. So I actually did, after college and graduate school, my first 20 years I spent in higher education. And from higher education, I moved into conference and convention planning specifically for higher education groups, okay? All very unique, right? And then that last year, I was the CEO of a company that we manage multiple associations. And we plan people's board meetings and their conferences and their conventions, and we publish their magazines for them, and we did their social media, so on and so forth. That last year, I did over 250 nights of the year, I slept in a hotel room. And
So a management consultant.
Parts of that can be sexy. You fly enough, you get to fly first class. I was getting suite upgrades in hotels, but at the end of the day, you're still in some random city by yourself in a hotel by yourself. The travel is wearing. And so what happened is there was a woman I knew here in town. She owned Xanadu Med Spa, and it was a very different concept at that time. But she wanted out. Her son was dying of brain cancer. She was 67 or 68 years old. And so I just, I knew aesthetics was a growing industry. I knew I had the capacity to run a business, and I just kind of blindly jumped into the deep end and said, okay, I can do this, right? And so 10 years later, here I am. I'm going to say I may have almost drowned a few times in the deep end because it's not as easy as everybody thinks. But my whole approach is I run the business. I hire the people that are the providers. They provide the expertise from that point of view. I provide the expertise of business management.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. So, what made you think, not to discredit your background, because you had a lot of great business experience. What made you think you're like, hey, I can really grow this med spa,
Naivete.
Tell us more. I want to hear a little bit more.
I wouldn't do it again, but I'm happy I did it.
Interesting.
The learning curve was much higher than I anticipated because it is an industry where you really need to know your stuff. And you need to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. And so I feel like my education has been much more than my master's degree was in aesthetic learning. So, I started going to conferences, I started going to conventions, and I started watching people's webcasts, and I signed up for a lot of educational pieces that were offered out there, and I pieced it together. But I fully acknowledge that my path is unique and probably not one I would encourage others to take. How's that for 2020 hindsight, 10 years later?
Let's go back to, you said, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't. And I wouldn't recommend for others to do it. So
yeah. It's
shed
been
some
hard.
light on that.
It's hard. So I think there are a lot of industries. So no matter what industry you have, you've got your widget, right? And managing the widget is half of the experience. Understanding your widget is the other half, okay? So admittedly, I jumped in without a strong understanding. 10 years later, I would call myself an expert. But the learning curve was much steeper than I naively anticipated out of the gate.
Okay, that's important. There's going to be people who are listening to this who are new. There's going to be existing business owners as well, and so let's talk about some of those key lessons. Like, if you had to do this again, I know you didn't come into this with a aesthetic background, but you came into it with a specific niche business background. What would you do differently? And not say, hey, I wouldn't get into this, but what would you do differently? What would you do better? What were some of those lessons?
Yeah, I think if I could do it all over again, I would have ramp up time, at least 9 months to a year to dig in and start to learn the industry, to understand the components that make it tick, to understand, here are revenue drivers that work, and here are some that maybe don't work so well. So I've had to do it by making a lot of mistakes alongside with having a lot of successes and a lot of trial and error. And so, like I say, I just kind of jumped in the deep end and said, okay, I'm going to swim. And that forces you to swim, but it's maybe a little bit harder of a path than it needed to be.
Mark, the aesthetics guy. That's it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how well or not well was the spa doing when you bought it?
Okay. So the spa that I bought had 3 staff.
Mm-hmm.
They did Botox, laser hair removal, facials, and IPLs. And that was it. Okay.
And what were they doing, like, revenue? Yeah.
They did just over the year before I bought it, $250,000.
$20K a month, basically.
Yeah, $20K a month. Yep.
Cool.
So now we are doing about what we did annually, monthly.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful.
So it's a big change, but it didn't happen overnight.
Let's get into that. I like that. So let's, and I want to tell the full story because now we're just teasing people. It's like $20K a month to $250K a month. It's a whole different business, right? So you came in, there was 3 people, 4 devices, or 4 different service lines. What happened next, Mark? What did you tackle first? You're new to aesthetics business. You're like, now I own this thing. What came next?
It was looking at our service menu and figuring out how do we expand, right? We need to be more things for more people because what we had was too limited. And so I bought a device, and I strategically bought a device that did multiple different things so I could, expand our service lineup pretty quickly that way. And then we started looking at some of our soft day spa type services and just figuring out what could we add to the service menu. And that was step 1, was just to be able to offer more. There are a lot of days that a lot of the rooms were just kind of sitting empty. And then part 2, of course, was identifying clientele and getting the word out about who we are, what we do, and trying to pull more people in the door. It sounds simple.
But it's not.
It's not.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit more. Because I'm sure you know what you're talking about, but I just want to make it super elementary. So you bought another device to help your existing customers, help them with solving more of their pain points.
Correct.
And then potentially attract other types of clients who had these pain points as well. What device was it, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, it was. It doesn't even exist anymore, but it was InMode's platform. It had body effects on it, so we could do a little bit of body contouring, and then it had a Forma and a Forma Plus for body. And shoot, there's one more handpiece on that sucker, and I can't remember what it was. But that's
Okay. And how did you promote it?
so I promoted it through, social media wasn't as big in 2015. So promoted it through local print media. And shoot, I joined quite a few like networking groups. I was part of the red carpet committee for the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I got myself out there and I talked about it. And I talked about it everywhere I could and to anybody that would listen.
And what kind of results did you get from networking?
It's slow. It's slow. It works, but it's slow.
It's painful, yeah. It's painful and slow, but I mean, it's like I guess the reason why digital advertising is so it's so effective, even though it's not free and it's definitely more costly. It's because you can talk about it in a uniform voice to many people at once. Obviously, those people you're not going to have the quality of relationships with and touch points and connections that you've had in a process of networking, but you can do it more effectively. And I think over a course of time, I mean, you're trading time with money, so you're able to just do it in a little bit more of a ROI friendly way.
100%.
Okay, so you had 3 people, you bought a device, you put yourself out there, you went to a ton of networking events, but that, and eventually things started to escalate and grow a little bit more. Walk us through some pivotal moments. Like, it's usually like, for Metspas or small service businesses, it's like 0 to 10 is like huge, then it's 10 to 20, 25, then it's 25 to that 40, 50 to $500,000 run rate, and then to your 100K, which is your $1 million run rate. Let's walk through some of those steps, because I think it's really important to highlight what happens at each and one of these stages.
Yeah. For me, it was I continually took any new profits I had and put them back into the business to continue to grow our footprint, right? At this point in time, I own more devices than anybody else in Northern Colorado. Probably, you can't prove it, but I bet I'm in the top 5 for the whole state. So I'm a little bit of a device junkie, and that's not always a good thing either. But it did allow me to just, every time I could, expand that menu. It gave me one more thing to talk about, one more pain point that we could solve, okay? So alongside of that, of course, is how do you let people know that you've done this? How do they even know that you have these new services available? So you've got your internal client list, and so you can communicate to them. But the big thing is, how does the rest of the world know? So that's where you get into, how effective is your web page? How effective is your SEO? How effective is your social media? How effective are your advertisements that you have out there, no matter what type of advertisement it is, right? And then one supports the other. It's like a chicken and egg. I'm not sure what comes first, but, you add a device, you grow a little bit. That growth allows you to expand your marketing, and then you buy another device, you grow a little bit more. And I keep focusing on devices. The truth is, we added a lot of other service opportunities as well. So,
like what?
So, within the day spa, just think about body wraps, sauna wraps, teeth whitening. You look for these opportunities to have add-ons, to have services that people want, need, and then figure out how to bring it to them.
Gotcha. Okay, so key lessons to 0 or 20 to 100K a month. Let's talk about those a little bit. I know you said, hey, we grew a little bit, we got another device. We put money back into the business. We grew more. I know we've been working together for about, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 months or something like that.
Right.
Doing paid advertising. But you were fairly successful before that, so I can't take that credit away from you. So I kind of want to understand, like, what did you do from a marketing and sales? Because we know marketing without sales is not effective. So what'd you do from like the 20K to 100K to grow the business? Were you running paid ads? What were you investing in at the time for acquisition? Were you getting a ton of referrals? Were you still in 17 BNI groups? Like, what happened?
A little bit of all of it. So at this point in time, I'll tell you, I'm not in any of those BNI groups anymore. I don't have time.
Sure.
Way too busy. So that's gone. But, back in the earlier years, yeah, I was still doing a little bit of that. I was looking at every kind of advertising that I could locally. So that included things like neighborhood magazines, regional publications, and then really trying to leverage. I think mostly a lot of my focus in those early days was just leveraging my client list, looking for referrals, looking to grow what we could provide for each client. If a client 1 year spent $250, how do you open up the door for them to spend $500 or $1,000 the next year, right? And so it's a combination of all of those strategies, and none of them stand alone. I think they all work synergistically together.
Okay, you bring up a really good point. Lifetime value of a customer. So so you were tracking data, right? You were doing a good job of tracking the data, and you're saying, hey, average client of ours, were you going down customer by customer that granularly, or were you saying, hey, we have 1,000 customers that spent or 100 customers that spent 250, or 1,000 customers that spent 250 on average? How can we get them? How can we increase their LTV? How can we get them to spend more next year? Tell me about that process, because I think that's very critical.
Yeah. For me, I did that probably more universally than I did, customer by customer. Certainly within my booking platform, I can run reports and, you think about what you're communicating about and try to find the target group of people who it's going to be most effective with and for. I run that report, and that's who we communicate to, okay? But in addition to that, it's more of an umbrella conversation of, how do we implement these strategies to just provide more for our client base? Because maybe Susie is the primary client, but Susie has a daughter who's 25, and Susie's got a husband, and, how can we leverage Susie to open up the door of opportunity for other people in her family, or also her friends, to come in? So, in the early years, I'd say it was a lot of thinking about that. If I had access to what I do today, that would look different. We didn't Instagram. What year did Instagram come out?
Who knows?
I don't remember, right?
Who remembers these days?
But a lot of this just didn't exist. I think I ran my first Google paid ad like maybe 2019, 2020. I think it would have been easier had I started doing Facebook ads, Google ads earlier. That'd be one thing I'd go back and change. But part of it is just the environment within which I lived, okay? And part of it is I didn't know what I didn't know.
Gotcha. How did you... So I'm going to just touch a little bit more on the customer... of increasing a customer lifetime value, or how much customers spend over the course of the lifetime journey with you. So you said, hey, you recognize the data, you analyze the data, you recognize, hey, our pain point is potentially that our customers, maybe they don't come back, or maybe just don't spend enough with us. How did you implement that with your team, in a sense? Like, it wasn't Mark doing all the work. Obviously, Mark was leading the way. So it was like, besides introducing new services, you can talk about that too, but introducing new services and devices, how did you execute it with your team so people did spend more and people did come back?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is having things that your team feels confident in, that they feel that they believe in. I think in addition to feeling confident about their ability to deliver the service. So at that point in time, they talk about it. And one of the things I've learned is I can get something that they don't have that confidence in, that they don't believe in. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I don't care how often I say, you need to be talking about this more. They don't do it. They only talk about those things that they like and believe in. And so you've got to get them on that bus of being part of the development of what those services are, right? So now, let's say they're coming in for a facial. Along the way, I added a hydrofacial device, right? So they needed to talk to their clients about, oh my God, we have this hydrofacial. You should see what it does. It's amazing, right? And then the next time the client comes, hopefully they get a hydrofacial. And then you do little things like, well, if you send a referral in, we'll give you $20 off your next hydrofacial. Those are the kind of games that I call it games, strategies that we used.
Business is a game for sure.
It is. It is.
Okay. So when you were at 100K a month, how many people did you have working at the spa? How many devices did you have?
I bet I was at about a dozen staff at that point in time. How many devices? I'm going to guess probably 6 or 7.
6 or 7 devices. Okay. So let's go back to talking about marketing. So you've tried a lot of different marketing techniques, right?
I have.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you live and you learn, right? I think that's really the case. I was just very fortunate enough that I've been in this industry for 4 years, and I've been running ads for other people. So I was like, hey, I got to run ads for my own med spa, which is good because it allowed me to skip the learning curve and skip the mistakes, right? So I was able to learn that.
You got to make mistakes for other people.
Yeah, you did. So let's talk about that, Mark. Let's talk about those mistakes you've made. What happened? What didn't work?
Well, I'll tell you out of the gate, I've probably worked with a half a dozen different agencies that do what you do.
Yeah.
That gave me no result. So, the reason I signed a renewal contract with you is we're actually getting results. I feel like in this industry, especially in the last 5 years, every time you turn around, there's somebody going, oh my God, I want access to that. There's a lot of money being spent there. And so every Tom, Dick, and Harry on every corner thinks that they can do it, right? And the truth is, there is a secret sauce, and you have to have the right algorithms and knowledge of how to, I'll use the word manipulate Facebook in a way, or Google or Instagram or whatever the platform is, to be able to have ads that get people's attention, convert, okay? That's part one. I've had other agencies that convert. They bring people in the door, and the clients, I'm going to call them coupon clients, all they care about is getting cheap or free, and then they disappear. So that's part two of it.
Or
So you
they
have
don't
to
show
get
up
their
at all.
attention, but then they have to be quality clients that you can actually turn into somebody with a lifetime value for you.
Yeah, lifetime value is key.
That unicorn offer out of the gate can get them in the door. But the goal is, how do we turn them into a lifetime client? And if they're the wrong kind of client, we're not even going to be able to convert them because they're just looking for the next coupon on the next corner.
So what kind of mechanisms do you have in place now to, after all the lessons learned so many years, to get people to keep coming back to, and or more so like, yeah, the things that you have in place and the things that your staff does to get people great results and make sure they're happy and keep them coming back. And my follow-up question, as you think about that, would be, do you guys also get a lot of referrals and track those as well? So I know that we got a couple questions, but I'll let you unravel those at your own pace.
Okay. I think, how do you get people to come back really is a per client conversation. So it starts with their first visit. They have to have a great visit. They have to get results. We're using a toxin offer currently. And the biggest mistake people make with toxins is they underdose, and then people are underwhelmed with the result, right? Or worse, they walk away and say, it didn't work. Those people don't know what they're doing. You certainly don't want that. So you have to give them a great result with a great experience. Then, out of the gate, we say we want to see you in 2 weeks, because it can take up to 14 days for that to set in. So let's get you back on the books right now, just so we can check and make sure that you're good. It's a little bit of that white glove treatment to a certain extent, but it also psychologically brings them in the door a second time. I think, personally, I believe that elevates trust, and it makes it more likely that then you can say, okay, let's get you on the book in 3 months, because you're likely going to need either a touch-up or another full treatment by that point in time. And if you can get them on the books, that's a huge feat. A lot of times people try to say they don't know what their calendar is, but guess what? When you go to the dentist is booking you 6 months out. How many times do you walk out with a card with your date and time of your next appointment? Almost always, right? So why can't it be the same for what we do? And so that's what we try to do. If we can't, then of course it's important to make sure we're following up at that appropriate timeline to remind them that it's time for their next treatment and get them in the door.
Okay. Let's talk about referrals.
Referrals. Yeah. So a lot of referrals happen organically. And then there are things that you can do to try to stimulate referrals as well. So you can have a referral program. I've had apps that give points for referrals. I've tried all different methods.
What has been the most successful for you?
Organically, just asking
Just
them
getting
for
people
referrals.
great results.
Giving people great results. Truly. If they are ecstatic with their outcome, listen, they talk about it. Even in an industry where they want to keep secret maybe some of what they're doing, they will talk about it to their best friends, their closest friends, their relatives. And those are the best referrals. I think the referrals that I've bought, your quality cuts about in half, and then it's a 50-50 crapshoot. Are they going to be a referral worth it or not? Does it mean that you don't do that? Absolutely not. You need referrals wherever you can get them. But to me, those best referrals are, you just give phenomenal service, make them feel really good about their experience, and then it happens.
Yeah. That goes back to what you're saying. It's like, if somebody comes in, and I know we do like a 20 unit tax offer, and in their consultation, they're like, this is what I want to achieve, and these are my pain points, and we don't upsell them more units to get them to that state, then we're doing them a disservice as well as ourselves. So I think that's what you're saying. That's like, hey, I'm going to give you what you want. It's probably going to cost you more, but we're going to sell you on this because this is exactly what you're looking for. This is what you're asking for. And we want to make sure you get the results that you desire, and we fulfill your expectations, not just give you the bare minimum.
Yeah, listen, if you take 20 units and you treat the forehead, the glabella, and the crow's feet, the results might last, what, a month, 6 weeks, if they even get full results. So we've really moved to advising them 20 units. If your pain points all three of those, let's focus on one with 20 units. Let's give you great results in one if all you can do today is 20 units. But if you want to treat all three of those, here's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. But so I think the theme today in all of my conversations that I've had on all the podcast episodes has been a singular focus for a pain point. So like, hey, what can we help you with today? That's your biggest concern. Let's address that first, and then we can move on with other stuff.
Yep.
But you need to make sure that you are absolutely understanding and assessing and analyzing all the pain points of the customer during the initial visit.
Yeah, exactly. And then giving phenomenal outcomes, right? I think another great example, we do cool sculpting, okay? Cool sculpting works. Cool sculpting absolutely works, and we have providers that know exactly how to place those applicators and get outcomes. I would say early in the days of having cool sculpting, we'd let clients talk us into meeting them at their quote-unquote budget, okay? Well, there again, if we're under-treating, they're going to be underwhelmed with the outcome, and then they're going to walk around telling everybody in town, cool sculpting doesn't work, or Xanadu doesn't know what they're doing, or both.
Can I make a quick comment on the budget? So I think most people, they think they say they have a fixed budget, but maybe they haven't done the proper research or have been properly educated on what it will take to get done whatever they need to get done, right?
Exactly.
So it's okay to challenge the budget in a friendly, polite, and educational way. That's like, hey, well, maybe what is your reference point for this budget? And understanding like, hey, what have you tried before? How much did you pay for it? When people come to me as a growth partner, we do lead generation, lead conversion, appointment booking, coaching and training. And they're like, hey, I want to spend $500. I'm like, I don't even make money on $500. Do you expect to spend $500 on anything and get good results these days? Probably not.
Right.
And do you think that, and then let's, call it an ad budget, right? They're like, hey, I want to make, call it $20,000. I'm like, okay. So how much do you want to spend? I want to spend $1,000. I'm like, oh, that's 20x return. If you know of any places that do 20x return, you should tell me because I'm in the wrong business.
Right.
And it really, there are no miracles, right? Too. And so setting realistic expectations is super important. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I just wanted to put a quick highlight that you can challenge the budget in a way that is relevant to the client's history.
Yeah, we have gone so far as to turn people away and to turn away the revenue opportunity if they can't come up to where they need to be to get the outcomes that they need. because I believe it does more harm to have somebody walking around town pissed off than the value of, the $3,000 you may have made off that treatment that doesn't work. And when they come in and they go, well, you're the third place I've been to. This is the highest quote I've gotten for that. Then we explain why. And a lot of times that works. Sometimes they go to the other place that does it cheaper. And guess what? A lot of times they come back to us 6 months later and go, you were right. What you told me would happen is exactly what happened, and I'm not happy. So can you fix it?
Yeah, I've had people, I've had both in my spa, people like that. And also I had agency clients who are getting really good results. Getting back. But anyways, side tangent. Let's go to, so I appreciate that. So customer focus, results focus, saying no if you can't accommodate their goals or reasonably, and if they don't have realistic expectations, some of the key things. So you're obviously you've been very patient, I think, in this business. It sounds like it. You've been in this business for about 10 years. I don't know
if I've been patient, but sure.
Fairly. Or you've built patience maybe over a course of time.
Right.
But even in this business for 10 years is obviously paying off. You're doing well. You're a healthy 7-figure practice. What's, at this stage, Mark, like, what's, I know that there's a bunch of different paths you could go, and, there's expansions, there's market leadership and domination, there is other business opportunities potentially. What's the strategy? What's the goal? What's the vision for the spa? Where do you want to take it? Planning ahead.
Yeah, the whole landscape is changing, and it's changing fairly rapidly. I think, the world used to be that med spas were all independently owned. And every time I blink, I feel like there's a new franchise popping up, right? So I think that's going to change the landscape. I think you have a lot of these aesthetic rooms where estheticians or nurses can just rent a room and provide services. That changes the landscape. In both of those cases, I think they undercut our price. And so we have to think, how do we compete in that environment without lowering our standards, without lowering our price point, because we know what we're going to be able to provide and produce is better. So I think that's a big thing to think about as we look forward. Personally, I have to think about too, does a second location make sense? At what point in time does it? When doesn't it? There's a whole lot of capital expense to get a second location up and running, not because of the brick and mortar, but because of all the devices. So what does that look like? Can you do a limited services type kind of thing? Earlier this year, I had somebody approach me to be part of their franchise. I turned that down. So, I think the landscape is changing pretty quickly.
So, back to my original, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What's the game plan? Are we dominating Fort Collins and just continue stay the course for now?
I don't know if I have all the answers for what I'm going to do. There are a lot of things to consider, and whereas I'm kind of spontaneous, I'm also calculating, and the two of those have to play together in the sandbox. I think really right now I'm just really focused on how do we position Xanadu to be the best in our market. And that takes a lot. It's easy to say that, but when you have 24 staff, that takes a lot. because you
Yeah.
have to make sure that all 24 of your staff are producing the best. And
Yeah.
all 24 of your staff are doing the appropriate follow-up, and all 24 of your staff are implementing the procedures the best way possible.
So what kind of help do you have with that? Organizationally, how's that hierarchy look? I know you have obviously people who are fulfilling services. What is your because in this industry, I find a big gap between owners, managers, and client-facing staff. I really do. And having that congruence and communication channels between those three parties, I think is extremely important. And I'll give you an example is we had a client in Chicago, and they're an awesome client, and they were getting a great number of really solid, healthy number of appointments every single month. And we, I think I told a story, but they just weren't happy with conversions. So we weren't really sure where the manager was involved in really enforcing in the accountability mechanism for the particular, I think, esthetician to sell and convert these consults into treatment plans. And so we ended up sending one of our people in there.
Okay.
And there was what we found out is no one even tried to sell. So, but as an agency, we're getting blamed for lack of sales. So,
Sure. But if your unicorn offer is 20 units of tox, and they come in and the provider goes, okay, let me give you your 20 units, you're going to fail.
right, without a consultation or a process, or also what I find too is I also find there's maybe not the right person is taking the client, or the person is not incentivized or properly commissioned to sell, or they just don't sell, right? But I want to go back to organizational design a little bit for the med spa space. How is your organization structured that allows you to be successful in making sure that you manage expectations and goals in the right way?
Yeah. I think that's a really good question, because as we talk about the evolution, that's something that's changed a lot. Because once upon a time, I was doing the one-on-one management for the entire team. Okay.
Wow.
And it gets to the point where I was pulled in way too many directions. I'd argue I'm still pulled in way too many directions. And so I couldn't do it effectively, right? And the fire that burns the hottest never feels like it's your staff management. But at the end of the day, it's one of the most important things. So for me, I put in place, I'll call them department leads. Okay. So I've got a lead person for the laser techs, and a lead person for the RNs, and a lead person for the day spa, a lead person for my body contouring center. And then I put 2 management level people in place to help me do the management.
Gotcha. Okay. So you do
It creates a pretty deep structure. For an organization of 24, I've got multiple levels. And I used to be just flat.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you the one that gets me. I don't understand how the people that own their practice are the primary provider, how they get it all done. I cannot imagine spending all day, every day, giving all the treatments and then still running the practice. So hats off to those. I've got my hands full just managing the practice.
They probably don't get it all done. That's the thing, unfortunately, as much as they try. Yeah, I think having the business skill set and ownership within a med spa or a healthcare setting is really important. I think it's a good blend. I think it's a necessary blend, because a lot of medical and healthcare providers operate on a please come to me basis. Maybe, I want to focus on helping you, but I won't sell you type of mentality. And unfortunately for some, healthcare, wellness, and aesthetics are all merging and becoming one. And like you said, there's so many different providers popping up. So you only have pretty limited opportunities to make an impression on these new patients, right? And you better do a good job with that opportunity. And I think, like you said, I think it's going to be a sales and marketing war.
I do too. I do. But that employee management is so important. Is part of the war because, again, I said I have 24 staff. If they come in and they see an RN who gives a bad experience, it could be bad outcome, it could be bad bedside manner, they don't call back and say, I'm going to try somebody new next time. They write off the whole practice. And so
everybody is affected.
Yeah. If they have one bad experience with one of those people, they'll just say, I'm never going back there. They suck.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with, let's talk about the bad, or the dark side a little bit. How do you deal with that? How does Mark deal with somebody getting or having a bad experience and having a negative review?
Yeah. Negative reviews happen. Sometimes it really is the client. But most of the time, there's an element of truth in every bad review. And so I take that bad review and I sit down and we talk about it. And I go, what's the backstory here? What happened? Okay. If I start seeing a trend, then I know I have a problem. There are going to be anomaly situations. But if I start seeing a trend, then it's probably time that you start looking for a new job. So that's part of my review process, along with upselling, along with product sales. That's all part of the conversation. So you have to be able to perform. Now, on the flip side, you get a 5-star review. I'm giving you a high five, and I want to talk about that too. So I'm not just coming to you with the bad ones.
You got to celebrate the wins with your team.
Yeah.
1,000%. Positive affirmation, accountability. We still owe us a review, Mark, for our agency. So.
Oh, do I? Okay.
You do. But,
okay.
I mean, it's huge, right? We get them every week. And for us, and I mean, even my spot, we get 5-star reviews every week. Those are huge. We know that. We comment on them. We replied to them. They're very well so celebrated. And we ask for them. And also on the agency side of things, when we get our video reviews, we obviously post them to our YouTube channel. I'm sure before you went to work with us, you referenced our YouTube channel as well, which, we pride ourselves on having the most case studies in the aesthetics industry, which is super powerful and a big testament to the type of work we do. And it's also internally, we posted and, we tagged the team members and everybody all the other team members celebrate together. So I think you're right. You gotta really, celebrate these victories. Not for too long, though.
Not for too long. You can't rest on your laurels.
That's right. We don't want to get comfortable. So let's talk about, let's kind of maybe start coming towards the end here and start summarizing things. So I really love this podcast idea that you're doing with your team. That's really cool. And what kind of advice? I mean, we talked a lot about strategies and things that work, things that don't work. What type of advice you have for other entrepreneurs in our industry? I know we, the whole idea of this podcast is to promote really cool stories like yours, and also to promote our industry and make sure we are all striving to at least get better and eliminate some of that mistrust and distrust that is not only in aesthetics but also in every service provider industry these days, it seems like. So the goal is to bridge that gap a little bit. So what kind of, advice you have just for other peers of ours in this industry that you would like to share publicly?
That's a broad question. I feel like we've been talking about a lot of advice. I my head goes immediately to one of the things not to do, and that is to buy too many devices too quickly and financially strap yourself. And I say that from some experience.
Devices don't bring people, that's for sure.
They do not bring people. And I think once upon a time, I thought if I buy this device, shoot, how many people do I need a month to make the payments on it? And I go, okay, if I do 5, then we're good. Surely I can get 5. It's not quite that easy. So, don't scale too much too fast to where you financially strap yourself. At the same time, you have to invest back into yourself. And when I say yourself, you have to invest back into the business. And so I think there are people out there also who take all the revenue and line their personal pockets. And that's not going to work either. You have to make the investment into the continual growth of your practice. And it doesn't take long for your practice to start to feel stale or to feel old. Because everywhere you look, every time you turn around, there's something new out there, something shiny and new. So you want people to feel like you're cutting edge, but you can't buy every new device that comes out, right? So it's a careful balance. So I think that's a big one. The other one for me would be, when you've got a staff member that you've just got a gut feeling about is going to be bad for the organization, let them go. I've had staff members that were some of my highest income revenue generators, but the damage that they caused to the team was not worth what they were bringing in the door.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right? And it's hard because they're bringing in those dollars, but in the long run, the harm that they cause costs you a whole lot more. And that one's been hard. It's a hard balance because you look at the books and you're like, but look how much they're making. But I've learned from a couple of them, it's not worth it. And guess what? When they leave, they're the ones that are the biggest jerks about pilfering your database, calling all your clients, telling all kinds of lies about their experience, where they worked, exaggerating the truth, and just creating a bad reputation for you in town. So they're more harmful than those 1-star reviews. So that'd be another one.
That's awesome. That's a lot of golden nuggets, Mark. It's amazing. Well, let's get in a couple of fun questions and then we'll wrap this up. I'd like to throw in completely unrelated stuff.
Okay.
Because I think it's because I think it's fun to do. I think it's fun to do.
Hit me.
What is your favorite luxury brand?
It's Louis.
It's Louis?
It's Louis.
You got a wallet? You got a wallet.
I've got my.
All right.
I may have a backpack. I know there's like quote unquote better brands, but I like my Louis.
Okay. What is your favorite non-luxury brand that you treat like a luxury brand?
J. Crew.
J. Crew. Yeah, it's like a mid-level, I would say. I
don't think J. Crew's luxury, but
yeah.
It's kind of my go-to.
Okay. Let's see. And then, did you play a sport when you were younger?
No. So
you didn't.
You can't tell. I'm 6'5". Okay.
I'm 6'6.5", Mark. So just be careful. Okay.
Okay. So in 6th grade already, I think I was like 6'1".
And you're like, mom was like, or dad was like, hey, you got to go play basketball.
You got to play basketball, right?
You have to.
And everywhere you go, everybody's like, oh my God, do you play basketball? So imagine this tall, lanky 11-year-old with no control of the limbs. That was me running, up and down the court. So I switched pretty quickly to the pep band.
Awesome.
How's that? I supported the sport.
Oh man, that's a good story. Mark, where could other people or other entrepreneurs find you if they would like to network with you or have a heart to heart? I know entrepreneurship can be daunting sometimes. People feel lonely. I took it upon myself from these conversations recently to make sure that I would like to do a better job of bringing operators and my clients together for masterminds, for brainstorming, for community, because I think it's super helpful and it's needed in our industry. But where can people find you if they would like to connect?
Yeah. Well, an easy, low-hanging, our website's xanadumedspa.com. Xanadu is spelled with an X. So if any of you are old enough to know Olivia Newton-John and her song Xanadu from the 70s, xanadumedspa.com. Beyond that, our Instagram handle is @XanaduMedSpa. Our Facebook handle is @XanaduMedSpa, so it's pretty easy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. This is awesome.